After a number of scandals involving men accused of sexual misconduct, universities across North America have approved the female renaming of campus buildings, scholarships, and academic programs. And that's my subject on today's Fiamango File. I'm Janice Fiamango of the University of Ottawa. The practice of building renaming began last summer at the University of California at Irvine and has spread rapidly, as many colleges are reacting to an outpouring of Me Too-style allegations of impropriety against men. Some universities have chosen not only to force resignations on accused men accused of a variety of alleged infractions, but also to remove the men's names from the edifices or the programs they financially endowed. And in an astounding move, some colleges have even decided to preemptively remove all male names from campus. One university official who drafted the new naming guidelines for a California university spoke to us on condition of anonymity, saying, quote, "The sexual harassment charges have come so thick and fast that it seemed wise to get ahead of the curve. That way we save ourselves considerable bad PR and financial outlay in the future." He added, as female numbers on campus continue to increase, we expect that the level of anti-male hatred and anti-male allegations will also increase, end quote. The VP academic of a respected Midwestern university currently contemplating a similar renaming concurred. He said, quote, "No one objects to a woman's name on a building. Male names, unfortunately, especially those associated with male achievement, invention, and discovery, make many women angry, and angry women don't perform as well on tests and assignments as we all want them to perform," end quote. The head of the student union at a prestigious East Coast college also approved the renaming. Quote, "The message is clear," said Tyler, whose pronouns are me, and me. Administrators recognize the need for a positive female and non-binary gendered space on campus, Tyler said. The more quickly the university can appease feminist demands, sometimes by making confessions feminists haven't even thought up yet, the more likely the universities may be able to avoid the protests we've seen lately. Some of those protests involved mass faint-ins, women exposing one breast in imitation of the ancient Amazons, and the pummeling of college spokespersons with sanitary products, end quote. Okay, no, not really. Everything I've said thus far is a joke. I was going to do this whole video as a parody, but my husband said it was too difficult to distinguish the parodic from the real. The problem is that the previous scenario is not that far beyond the realm of possibility, a realm in which we are seeing men punished for so-called crimes whose harm exists entirely in the minds of the shrinking violets who find cause for offense and deep wounding in even the most ordinary of human interactions. This is actually not funny at all. It's a vivid illustration of what happens when irrational demands to protect women's feelings are allowed to override common sense and basic fairness. So let me start over, basing everything from this point on in the facts as we know them. The real controversy about building names did emerge at UC Irvine last June 2018 when Professor of Biology and University benefactor Francisco Ayala, a Spanish-born man who donated $10 million to his university, was forced to retire at age 84 and was barred from participating in any future university events after 4 women reported that he had sexually harassed them, most often by by giving them compliments and sexually tinged expressions of admiration, and secondarily through minor physical touching. In one of the most remarkable examples of his so-called misconduct, he said to a woman, quote, "I just learned that women don't like to be told they're beautiful, but I know you don't mind," end quote, to which apparently the victim was too intimidated to respond. The alleged helplessness of the female complainants in this case is remarkable. According to an investigation carried out by Ayala's university, the professor on one occasion jokingly offered a colleague the opportunity to sit in his lap while she gave a presentation. On another occasion, he allegedly told a female professor that she had been so lively while making a certain presentation that he thought she would, quote, "have an orgasm," end quote. On another occasion, he allegedly remarked to a pregnant woman, "You're huge." Even if all the allegations were true, it is staggering to think that such harsh action was required in response. Professor Ayala, in turn, denied many of the allegations, and in his own defense, he insisted that old world courtesy lay at the heart of many of his remarks and actions. We might also assume that his advanced age, not to mention the different, more effusive cultural context out of which he emerged, would be mitigating factors to lessen the harm he was said to have caused. Could these women not simply have avoided him if they found his compliments so disturbing, or simply ignored his remarks? But apparently that's too much to ask of the modern woman. The investigation found that female colleagues and students, quote, felt professionally undermined, end quote, by Ayala's words, and his habit of kissing women on both cheeks was unwelcome, and some students and staff felt, quote, unable to complain, end quote. That's all it took for Professor Ayala's lifetime of achievements to be sent down the memory hole. A few colleagues of Professor Ayala found his treatment excessive. Professor Elizabeth Loftus, a famed cognitive psychologist at UC Irvine, is reported as saying that she was, quote, shocked that this man's life was ruined over this collection of reactions to his behavior, end quote. She found the allegations thin and, quote, far from the obviously bad behaviors that we want to be punishing, end quote. But most of those consulted were satisfied with Ayala's punishment and felt he had it coming. After all, he'd been warned and he hadn't stopped his complimenting. One woman, Professor Jane Zelikova, an ecologist from the University of Wyoming, said that sexual harassment of all kinds deserves to be punished, not only the most severe. No form of harassment is okay, she asserted. I hope Professor Zelikova will remember that if a small group of vindictive students ever comes forward to say that she gave them unwanted compliments that made them feel professionally undermined. So the elderly Professor Ayala, recipient of many awards and distinctions for his pioneering work in Drosophila speciation, is now barred from campus and formally disowned by the university. He will not receive the emeritus status that bestows honor on retired professors. Most remarkably, he was symbolically banished by having his name removed from 2 buildings constructed through the $10 million he had given after he grew rich from a wine grape growing business. According to the university, his name will be taken off the School of Biological Sciences and the Science Library, as well as from certain graduate fellowships, endowed chairs, and other programs, many of them started or supported as a result of his generosity. One of the women who complained about him, in fact, had been awarded a research chair position with his funds. I don't suppose she feels strongly enough to give the money back. The feminist message couldn't have been clearer. Being a first-rate scientist with an international reputation and having given out of one's own money to support the university's teaching and research mandate are not enough to save one from the ignominy of women's accusations, no matter how non-threatening one's behavior. Though convicted of no crime and though his main transgression seems to have been an inability to stay silent about his admiration for female beauty, this elderly man is now a non-person at UC Irvine. I wonder if his accusers will ever contribute even a tiny fraction of what he did to science. But not content with its punitive actions, the school's chancellor, Howard Gilman, even unctuously thanked Ayala's accusers, calling their action, quote, extremely courageous, end quote. I'm sure you'll also be glad to know that Irvine's diversity advisors reached out to offer counseling to the university community just in case any other women had the vapors about all those compliments. It may be too early to say that the Ayala scandal is part of a trend, but it is not a one-off. And my prediction, for what it's worth, is that we'll see a lot more calls for the removal of the names of men who offend. After all, why should women have to see the names of men they don't like anywhere? A few months after Ayala's disgrace, students at the Savannah College of Art and Design in the state of Georgia made the news with a petition to have the name of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas removed from the Clarence Thomas Center for Historic Preservation. A graduate of the school, Sage Lucero, began the petition citing women's feelings of safety after the Judge Kavanaugh hearings. She said, quote, I don't want any other female who has hopes and dreams to have to walk through the doors of that building. They shouldn't have to be subjugated, I think she meant subjected, to that toxic feeling, end quote. Some other students concurred, saying how dangerous it is for sexual assault to be condoned, though it never is condoned, and though Clarence Thomas was never even accused, let alone convicted, of sexual assault. That didn't deter the petitioners. Quote, by naming a building after Clarence Thomas makes it feel as though sexual assault in the workplace isn't taken seriously, said Sarah Brassey, a senior at the school. Some wanted the name of the building changed to the Anita Hill Center. An article on the controversy noted that, quote, attorney Anita Hill claimed that Thomas sexually harassed her and an FBI investigation followed, end quote. It did not mention that the FBI found insufficient evidence to proceed with the criminal charge, but no matter, in an era in which claims alone are thought sufficient to smear a man's reputation forever. Sage Lucero summed up the Believe the Women position thus. She said, quote, when will we learn that a victim's trauma should outweigh politics, end quote. More than 2,400 people signed her petition, though many students couldn't say when asked what Thomas had done that justified his name being removed from the building, and some didn't even know who he was. Eventually, the petition was taken down after Lucero was criticized in turn as a white woman seeking to disgrace a black man. So I'm sure next time she'll make certain that her target is the right color for elimination. Feminists have long claimed that men control women by controlling language, and that a true feminist revolution can only come about when women take the tools of their oppression, in this case the power to name, into their own hands. I expect that for the foreseeable future, universities will be a lot more careful how they designate their buildings, and will find that female names have a much fresher, safer ring to them, though I presume that male money will remain attractive for some time yet.